So last week we worked on a Hello World application and we kind of did a very quick overview of Visual Studio, and we're going to take a little more time this week and work on completing a more complex application for our computing history facts. So you should go to your Start menu and you should find your Visual Studio, whether it's here or whether it's under Programs under Microsoft Visual Studio. Open it up. It may look like this if you have left these checkboxes checked. If you uncheck them, you won't get this anymore. I leave it checked so that if I ever want to come back in and get some real quick hints and help, I've got the links. But regardless, you can either do a new project here if you have that, or you can do File, and we're going to do a new project. And we're going to choose from our templates. We're going to make sure we have Visual Basic and Windows Form Application selected. And so it can take a few minutes for this to start up. And what you should be doing is you should be locating the pictures that you got. You got about 20 pictures, 2 per item, and your facts that you typed up in Word or Notepad. And we are going to build a basic application. So here we are in our designer, in our Integrated Development Environment, or IDE. And we're going to take this blank canvas, this default form that we get, and it's a little small, so you can drag the corners. As long as the form, you click on it once to highlight it, and you have the handles, the little white boxes around the edge, you can actually drag it to make it larger. That's what we're going to do, otherwise it's going to be too small. Now remember, now that I've clicked on the form and I've highlighted the form, over here is my Properties window, which is pretty important. And it shows me that I'm pointing to Form 1, the default name that they have given to the form. We're going to change that to make it a little more standard. And all of our forms are going to start with FRM. And we're going to make this History, FRM History. And I just randomly picked the word history. Of course, it could be anything. So we've renamed it. This is the point where you could go in and experiment, and I'll encourage you to do that later with background colors and fonts and things like that. For right now, we've got our form. Now remember, your toolbox is over here. If you haven't pinned it, you can click on it and then pin it in place so that you have it in front of you. And if it's looking like this, you just click on Common Controls, and all of the usual controls that you use for Visual Basic will be right here in the toolbox. This is your toolbar going across with the play button and the other icons for saving and opening. This is your menu bar going across with the words on it. Here's your Solutions Explorer and your properties. And this becomes important when you have more forms and buttons and things than we're going to have right now necessarily. So I'm going to click back on the form to highlight it. And so I'm going to go to the toolbox and I'm going to put a picture box on here. So you're going to scroll down and find picture box. I'm going to click it once. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to make it whatever size you want, a decent size. And now I have a picture box, and you'll notice it has the handles that show the focus. And now in Properties, I see that I am on my picture box. I come up here to my Search Explorer. Now I've got Form History. Okay, that's just still the same. I thought it was going to show the picture box, but it doesn't. So now I'm going to go up, and I've got these in alphabetical order. Remember, you can change that by clicking here, but usually the first property is always, one of the first properties is always name, even if it's in alphabetical order, or reverse alphabetical order. Name is usually at the top because it's important. So picture boxes are going to start with PIC. So we're going to call this Pic history. Okay. So we're going to just give that a name. You can call it whatever you want, but if you want to follow my example, you should probably use my names. So here's the picture box. We'll come back and populate that later. Today we're just going to get the basic objects. These are all objects or controls. So we're going to get everything we need on the form. So we're going to need a button for each of the 10 items because we're going to have the user click a button for Abacus and for Babbage and for Hollerith or whoever else. So what we're going to do is we're going to click once on button, then you come over here and you draw it, or you can double click. Now notice if you double click, it kind of puts it where it wants. You've got to get focused on it, hold down the mouse button and drag it. And then I'm going to make them all somewhat similar in size. So you can see that you can adjust the sizing on the buttons as well. The first thing I'm going to do is come back to button 1 and focus on it, and I'm going to change the name to BTN Abacus. I'm going to come to and make sure that worked. Yeah. Come to button 2, and I'm going to change the name to button Babbage, for example. So what you need to do is finish putting the other 8 buttons on here. You need 1 button per person, and actually hold off on that because I want you to use the same names that I'm going to use. So we'll come back to that shortly. So we've got our picture box, we've got our buttons, we've got our form. The other thing we're going to need is a label because we're going to have that text change. Remember the 10 little text items that you wrote up? We're going to have those change a little bit each time a button is clicked, each time the picture changes. So we're going to need a label. And that's right, it doesn't let you size the label. I forgot that. So we're going to click on that. Notice we know it's focused because there's one little square up here. And we're going to name it LBL Info, capital I-N-F-O. LBL, capital I-N-F-O. Make sure you don't accidentally put a 1 in there. Those are L's and I's. So now we've got our label. We're going to focus back on it. And when we come in, we want the label to actually have some default text that displays. So right now, if I run it, it's just going to say label 1. And that's the default text that's going to show. Well, we don't want that. We want to change that. So we're going to come down to the text property, and we're going to give the user some instructions. Click a button in order to get facts about computing history. You can put any instructions in there. That's my suggestion as to what you put. But you can put any generic text in there that clues the user in that they need to click various buttons in order to get information. And let's go to the font. Let's change that. So when you come to the font, you'll actually get that little button right there that you'll click on. I'm going to change it to bold, maybe a 12 point. There's my preview. And again, notice when you click on this, you get a button here. You've got to click on that to get your standard font pop up. So now I've got some better looking text in there. I'm going to save it. Here's my pick, history, my buttons. So what I would like for you to do for the rest of class is get your form set up with the picture box, 2 of the buttons, the label, resize the form, and then I would like for you to change the font and the look of the label text. I'd like for you to go to the buttons. You can also change the font on those and the color. So I'd like you to experiment with that. And again, I'm going to come in and do something a little different. On this button, come in and change it here. I will probably use the same font on each button, but you do not have to. You can experiment with that. I'm going to change the text on the button, which I thought I had done. Maybe I didn't. So not only did I change the name, now I want to change the text. And this is going to be Babbage to match BTN Babbage, which is the name. Maybe I'll put Babbage and Byron on there. So, oops, and be careful because these things will move on you. So when I'm done working with something, I usually click off onto the form one time to focus on the form so I'm not accidentally moving things around. So now we've got our form with nothing really working on it. We're just going to set it up, see that it comes in. Notice there's nothing in the picture box yet. Okay, so we're going to work on that later. I'm going to have one more button. I think I'm going to put it down here. And we are going to learn this time how to code a close button, which we didn't do on our Hello World. Make this BTN close. I'm going to come down to the text property. I'm going to call it close or exit. That's my text rather. And we will learn how to code that for this project. Now, because I'm going to have like 10 buttons going down here, this is probably going to have to come down a little bit to allow enough room for that. And then I can probably expand this. You'll probably need to make that bigger. That you can kind of play with as you go. So now we've got a runnable project. Doesn't really do anything, but we're getting closer to having a nice application. And what's going to happen is when we click Abacus, the picture of the abacus is going to come up, and the text here is going to change to do your facts about the abacus. Then when they click Babbage and Byron, this picture will change and this text will change. And we're going to do that for each of the 10 things that we chose. So I'm going to leave you some time to create this, play around with fonts, colors, etc., and get everything set up, and we will pick up with this again tomorrow. Let me know if you need anything.